I wanted to share with everyone today what makes me run to work every day as the executive director of the Idaho State Historical Society. And I think the place I would start is legacy and how we stand on the shoulders of those who came before us, but we carry out this legacy that started in 1881, where the territorial legislature asked and created basically the Association of Idaho Pioneers to chronicle the territory and make a record of Idaho's earliest pioneers. So there we began as an organization. And then visionary people over the course of the next several years really led our organization. And in 1907, we became an official state agency. I think that was a turning point for us in terms of becoming recognized as part of the state's government as providing an essential service, even in 1907. We think of those terms now, but 1907, under Governor Gooding, we were created as an official agency of the state. And at that point, the agency was created, and then also the State Museum was created, even though we didn't really have a location yet. In 1947, then, the legislature put the Idaho State Archives under our portfolio, and that had, the records of the state had been in the Supreme Court and they had been in different departments, but the legislature felt like there needed to be a central repository. So that allowed us to be responsible for the fiscal, administrative, legal, and long-term research value for archival collections to the state of Idaho. And then not far following that, in 1950, the museum actually opened in Julia Davis Park. So you can see there's a weaving of the development of our organization, again, based upon our good work, based upon our collecting, based upon the role that we played in government. And then in 1966, the National Historic Preservation Act was enacted by Congress. And this was really the first time in our country's history where it became the policy of the United States government to preserve and recognize its important places in America. And that public law then cascaded out into the state historic preservation offices being established in every state and in every territory. So the State Historic Preservation Office became part of the agency's portfolio in 1974. Kind of makes sense. It was at that point in our country's history where it was the bicentennial era. We were reflecting on the establishment of our country. And so historic sites then became kind of the hot new thing across the country. So not long after that, we were gifted the opportunity to operate the old Idaho Pen. We added the Stricker Ranch and Rock Creek Station to our portfolio, the Pierce Courthouse. And of course, then that became part of our historic sites portfolio. And so that sort of gives a sort of an overview of how our different sections of the portfolio came together. And in 1976, the museum, the State Museum, became one of the first museums in the country to be accredited by the American Alliance of Museums. So I call that sort of the building and production and getting our roots era. So if we fast forward then into the 80s across the country, and then of course in Idaho as well, what was happening in State Historical Societies, museums, and archives is we were honing our craft. We were beginning to understand that we had to have more public involvement, more engagement. We had to be focused on education. We had to tie into curriculum. And so I think that era of our history, we became champions at collecting not only physical collections, but archival collections, and again, stories that helped us to communicate the more broad story of Idaho's history. And throughout the 2007, 2010 era, we were again blessed because we got to be active participants in the restoration of the Idaho State House. And it was our goal, I think this was great, is that we decided that we wanted to have a presence every 6 feet in the Idaho State House because it's where all of our stakeholders and legislators are. So we created a whole series of permanent exhibitions and then special exhibitions and carved a role out for our agency as again, essential to the Capitol. So we are partners with the Idaho Capitol Commission in offering our services in terms of preservation of the building, but also interpreting the building story. So that's a legacy that we created out of the restoration of the Capitol, which reopened beautifully in 2010. Not long after that, we were given the great opportunity by Governor Otter to take a leadership role in celebrating and commemorating the territorial sesquicentennial. And so this offered us the opportunity to have a new lens on history. We invited people to the Capitol steps that included, of course, scholars and elected officials, but tribes and members of our community that represented new and different voices. So Cherie Buckner-Webb sang, Father Camacho gave the invocation, we had a tribal blessing, and so it was a great opportunity to shift the narrative, broaden it out, and it's something that we continue to today. And we also realized out of that territorial sesquicentennial, the Abraham Lincoln, his legacy in Idaho exhibition at the Idaho State Archives. And then I would say that sort of 2000 to today really has been a focus on engagement, participation, bringing many voices to the table. And so most recently, of course, we created the newest state museum in the country. Our new museum opened in 2018, and it was open for about a year before we were eclipsed by the pandemic. But you know what? We all buckled down during the last couple of years and found a way to make our story relevant, found a way to make our staff excited and engaged and safe in a very challenging time, which sort of leads me to the last year, because we really took a big inward look at ourselves during this last couple of years of having to hunker down and really think about how we're the most relevant to our community. We engaged in a new strategic planning process where we thought a lot about how do we build our internal family? How do we make sure that our staff is happy, well-credentialed, well-placed in their positions? And then how do we think about our family? And how do we think about our external family, including, of course, visitors, but our members, our donors, our boards, our affiliate boards, our stakeholders, and how we could leverage all of those resources to build this amazing history enterprise that we are leading today. And so taking that to heart, we, over the last year, accomplished amazing things. So a really short list, but a critical list. So the Old Idaho Pen won 2 American Association for State and Local History Awards, one for Disturbing Justice, one of our most recent permanent exhibits at the Old Pen, and one for Behind Gray Walls, our podcast that has a worldwide audience. So amazing that we got national recognition for those 2 efforts. We launched the Trailblazing Women of Idaho exhibit, albeit a year later than it was supposed to because of the of being a little bit eclipsed, the centennial of suffrage, a little bit eclipsed by our pandemic. But that exhibit at our state museum features 104 women, 20 of whom are living, to chronicle and celebrate and commemorate the amazing impact that women have had across time, from Sacagawea to Kristen Armstrong here in our great gem state. We one of my favorite memories of this last year is celebrating with the SHPO staff when we invited our congressional delegation to come along with us, along with the governor's staff, to look at the opening of Design Vim. This design shop is actually leasing the 4466 station that's on State Street. That's our recent Tax Act project with regard to the State Historic Preservation Office's role of helping to incentivize private sector investment in historic preservation by development and investing in income-producing properties. And so this is an amazing 1950s era gas station that's been converted into this high-end design shop. And having the governor's staff there, the congressional delegation members, our board, it was just electric in terms of people getting that connection, but about why these resources are so important to our present. They're not just looking back, but we're looking forward with these historical resources. So that was an amazing experience. Another amazing experience was in the spring. We went and did a nice ribbon cutting at our Stricker Ranch and Rock Creek Station down near Twin Falls. We had invested, between private funding and state funding, over $600,000 of investment into that site. We put on new roofs. We renovated wet and dry cellars. We created better ADA access. We created an educational pavilion for school children. And it was just, I think, electric in terms of the community participation. Devin Boyer, the chairman of the Shoshone-Bannock, gave a blessing and gave his wisdom about today's people and how they needed to get along in this world and really be great partners, and expressed his great appreciation of the Historical Society for including their team on the interpretation. We had singers and songwriters, Oregon Trail experts. The governor spoke about the importance of our history. So I think that ribbon cutting was a great metaphor for our agency in terms of how we not only practice our craft, but we make sure that people's voices, in addition to ours, lead the way, and that we do that as a team for the benefit of Idaho. So 2021 being our 140th year, which was an amazing commemoration, brought us a lot of success and a lot of recognition. And I think another thing that was just a heartwarming experience is that we served the governor in unique ways. And our state historian wrote a policy briefing for the governor about the history of pandemics in Idaho so that he could use that in his decision making. And we're often called upon now when the governor has to make a policy decision to help do research and analyze actions from the past that would help inform their decisions today. So 2021, fabulous year. Every single department of the agency did something brilliant. We also commemorated the 100th anniversary of our Capitol. We produced a beautiful portfolio along with members of the community and sponsors that really chronicled the history of the Capitol, but we did it in a, of course, very distinctive way. We started with the original portfolio that was the opening portfolio of the Capitol when it first opened, and then we replicated it and updated it to today's photos. So it was a brilliant piece of work where we could feature our collection, but then also make sure that this portfolio included the names of all of our elected officials and constitutional officers and foundation members and our board members, again, making that document very inclusive. On the note of inclusivity, I'm so proud of our team. So a couple of way amazing, cool things happened this year. Our museum staff, our Latina staff, created a series of virtual programs called Nuestras Voces, and that is a Spanish-speaking program, and it has been wildly successful in engaging that part of our community. The State Historic Preservation staff did an amazing multiple properties documentation process where we chronicled African American civil rights sites in the state, and so out of that process we listed the Bethel Church in Pocatello on the National Register. So we did a lot of work looking at how do we make sure that our work is inclusive and is thoughtful about our community. We're also working with our 5 Idaho tribes to update the highway markers across our state. There are over 300. That's a program that started in the mid-60s, and it, of course, stands to reason that there would be some inaccuracies, especially regarding tribal history in that program, so we're working to update those. And then we also are looking forward, and I'll transition into that in a minute, but Nolan Brown from the Shoshone-Bannock tribe has been our point person for interpretation at our Stricker site and also is joining our Old Pen reimagining team. So that's a great transition into where we're going and why this years to come are even more exciting as we build on the origins of our agency, sort of building our infrastructure, then transitioning into more engaged conversations about why we have relevance to our community, and now how we make that even better. And a couple of great projects to go. So this next year, 2022, we're featuring the 150th year of mining history in our state. Every department will touch on that, but we're so grateful that we have raised over $1 million to restore the U.S. Assay Office, which is in downtown Boise. It's the place where we headquarter our state historic preservation staff. It's one of 3 national landmark buildings in our state, so very unique in and of itself. So the building will be restored, the foundation will be restored, there will be tuck painting and all kinds of physical improvements to the building itself. But the best part is that we will be doing a whole interpretation plan for the landscape and for a sort of a history park, if for lack of a better word, to make the general community around where the assay office is located understand its significance and invite people to be part of that experience by hanging out on the lawn or taking a walk around the perimeter of the property and being able to learn more about the interpretation of the building, the site, the history of the landscape, and up to and including today and the use of that building as one of our offices. So the grant came from a Save America's Treasures grant. So this is a big public-private partnership. $500,000 Save America's Treasures, National Park Service grant, $500,000 from the Idaho capital funds, and then over $100,000 in private funds to contribute to the external interpretive walkway and in external exhibits that will be in the landscape. That's an amazing public-private partnership, again, with the state of Idaho and then private donors who have come together to help us to replant the grounds and reimagine that space as it transitioned from 150 years ago to today. So super amazing, very exciting. And then the National Endowment for the Humanities also helped us with a grant to start planning for reimagining our Old Penn site, which is one of the top tourism destinations in our state already, but we're extremely excited to think about its interpretation comprehensively, think about the visitor experience there, and then talk about and share the multiple stories there. There's a great architecture story, there's an amazing garden story, but most importantly is the story of incarceration and that history over time and how that impacts us today, and how do we tell that story in a way that bears witness to our social justice issues of today, and also what does that mean for how we can teach better, how we can think about the humanity that was in that site and what that expression is over time. We're so excited that the grant from the National Endowment for the Humanities allows us to bring together scholars from all over the country, including the former director of the Smithsonian Museum of American History and the head of the Eastern State Penn, as well as local experts in law enforcement, our staff, and again, the tribes. Clearly, this territorial era prison is on sacred Native American ground. So we want to tell that story and help people understand that story from, again, 150 years ago to today. So we're very honored by that. And we will also be traveling the replica Idaho State Constitution around the state. This is a project that started a couple of years ago where we took the original Constitution to Utah and had it conserved and had a replica made so that it could travel. We get requests all the time for people to have the Constitution in their neighborhood. Clearly we can't do that. It's only one document. It really can't leave the archives for very long, but it allows us to take the story of the Constitution and the story of our agency around the state in a very purposeful and meaningful way. Also in 2022, we have been invited by the Speaker of the House, Speaker Bedke, to reimagine the Historic Treasurer's Office at the State House. So that's part of our capital curation program under the direction of our State Museum. So we will be doing, of course, exhibits at the Capitol and then special changing exhibits at the museum as well. So 2022 is a year that I think will be fabulous in terms of more opportunities to engage our community, share our story, build our family. And I think in closing, the people of today need the State Historical Society and its collections, its departments, its staff, and its resources. So we are, of course, made up of the Idaho State Museum, the State Archives and Records Center, the Old Idaho Pen and State Historic Sites, the State Historic Preservation Office, along with a team of 70 staff people, 100 plus volunteers, affiliate boards. It's a great team, but the public really needs these services that we develop and deliver for a few key reasons. These things and the stories that we share provide people context about who we are today and why we are today. We at the collections really provide a grounding for people to understand who they are as Idahoans. The educational services that cascade out of our amazing resources help create conversation, help create that engagement that is so important for mutual respect and understanding that we need today, and that all of those things that we do serve as a beacon for the future. So we're really proud of the work of the folks who were here 140 years ago, proud of the work all the way through the last decades, and then really imagining the work of the future. Thank you.